The humid air hung heavy, a suffocating blanket woven with the stench of decay and the sweet perfume of unknown blossoms. Rain lashed down, turning the already treacherous jungle floor into a slick, muddy morass. Elias Thorne, a man more comfortable in a courtroom than hacking through undergrowth, stumbled, his bespoke Italian shoes sinking deep into the mire. He cursed, the sounds swallowed by the cacophony of the jungle. He was a lawyer, not Indiana Jones. He represented corporations, not lost causes. A pro bono case for a small indigenous tribe fighting a mining conglomerate. Evidence surfaced, ancient artifacts, stories passed down through generations, hinting at a sacred temple, a place forbidden to outsiders, said to hold secrets that could prove their ancestral claim to the land. Elias, initially skeptical, had been swayed by the desperation in their eyes and the unwavering conviction in their voices. He'd agreed to investigate, expecting a quick dismissal. Instead, he'd found himself lost alone and utterly terrified. The map, sketched on a piece of treated animal hide by the tribe's shaman, was now a soggy mess in his pocket. He'd veered off course hours ago, lured by a false trail. The shaman had warned him. The jungle protects its secrets. It tests those who seek to uncover them. A sudden rustling in the undergrowth sent a jolt of adrenaline through him. He fumbled for the pistol he'd reluctantly agreed to carry, his hand slick with sweat. He wasn't a gunman, he didn't even like guns. A figure emerged from the shadows, not a jaguar, not a poisonous snake, but someone far more dangerous. Isabel Moreau, his nemesis, his professional rival, and, for a brief, ill-advised period in law school, his lover. She was everything he wasn't. Ruthless, ambitious, and utterly devoid of scruples. She represented the mining conglomerate. She was the reason he was in this mess. "Thorne," she said, her voice sharp and cold, cutting through the din of the jungle. She looked surprisingly composed, her designer hiking gear immaculate despite the conditions. "Moreau," Elias replied, his voice tight, "what are you doing here? Spying for your clients?" Isabel raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "Hardly. Let's just say I have a personal interest in the temple, and that our mutual friends at the mining company aren't exactly thrilled with my independent investigation." "Independent investigation? You're working against them now?" "Let's just say I've discovered some inconvenient truths. Truths they'd rather remain buried, along with you if necessary. And judging by the look on your face, you've stumbled onto something too." An uneasy truce formed between them, born of necessity and mutual self-preservation. They both knew they were expendable pawns in a much larger game. They both knew the mining company would stop at nothing to protect its interests. And they both knew that the only way to survive was to work together. "All right, Moreau," Elias said reluctantly. "What do you know about this temple?" "More than you do," she smirked. "Legend says it holds a map to immense power, power the mining company wants to exploit, power that could corrupt everything. And you're here to stop them?" "Let's just say I'm here to ensure they don't get their hands on it." They spent the next few days navigating the treacherous jungle, their initial animosity slowly giving way to a grudging respect. Isabel proved to be surprisingly resourceful, her knowledge of botany and survival skills far surpassing Elias's. He, in turn, used his legal acumen to decipher cryptic clues found along the way, piecing together the fragmented history of the lost civilization. They faced venomous snakes, swarms of mosquitoes that left them covered in welts, and treacherous terrain that threatened to swallow them whole. They shared meager rations, slept in makeshift shelters, and watched each other's backs, constantly on edge. One evening, huddled around a small fire, Isabel revealed more about her motives. "My grandfather was an archaeologist," she said, her voice softer than Elias had ever heard it. "He disappeared in this jungle years ago, searching for the temple. The mining company was involved." Elias looked at her, seeing past the cold, calculating facade he'd always known. "You're not just here for the relic. You're here for revenge." Isabel nodded, her eyes filled with the pain he understood all too well. He too had been driven by revenge once, after his father had been unjustly accused of corporate fraud. It was what had led him to become a lawyer in the first place, a crusader for justice. But somewhere along the way, he'd lost his way, becoming the very thing he'd sworn to fight. After weeks of relentless searching, they finally found it. It was hidden deep within a secluded valley, shrouded in mist and overgrown with vegetation. It was far more magnificent than either of them had imagined. Carved from black obsidian, it stood as a testament to a civilization that had mastered architectural techniques that defied explanation. Hieroglyphs covered every surface, telling a story of gods and monsters, of creation and destruction. As they approached the entrance, a figure emerged from the shadows, a man in a suit, his face obscured by the brim of his hat. "Welcome, Thorn," the man said, his voice smooth and menacing. "And Moreau, I must say, I'm impressed I didn't think you'd make it this far." It was Mr. Sterling, the CEO of the mining conglomerate. The man who had orchestrated the entire charade, the man who had silenced Isabel's grandfather. "Sterling," Elias said, his voice trembling but firm. "This ends here." "Oh, I think it's just beginning," Sterling replied, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "You see, I've been waiting for you and your expertise, to unlock the secrets of the temple." "We won't help you," Isabel spat, her hand reaching for the hunting knife sheathed at her hip. Sterling chuckled. "You have no choice. I have men inside the temple, securing the relic cooperate, and you might live to see another sunrise. Refuse, and you'll join your grandfather Moreau, feeding the vultures." They were trapped, outnumbered, and outgunned. Reluctantly, Elias agreed to help, knowing that it was the only way to buy them time. He began to decipher the hieroglyphs, revealing a series of intricate puzzles that guarded the inner sanctum of the temple. The hieroglyphs weren't just a guide to the relic. They were a warning about the dangers of tampering with forces beyond human comprehension. He shared his findings with Isabel. "This isn't just about a relic," he whispered. "It's about a power that could destroy the world." They knew they had to stop Sterling, no matter the cost. As Elias solved the final puzzle, the entrance to the inner sanctum opened, revealing a chamber bathed in an ethereal light. In the center of the chamber stood a pedestal, and on the pedestal rested the relic. Sterling rushed forward, his eyes gleaming with avarice. "Finally," he said, reaching for the skull, "the power is mine!" But before he could touch it, Isabel lunged forward, tackling him to the ground. A fierce struggle ensued, the sound of their grunts and curses echoing through the chamber. Elias knew he had to act fast. He grabbed a nearby torch and approached the crystal skull. He remembered the shaman's words. The temple protects its secrets. It tests those who seek to uncover them, and it punishes those who seek to exploit them. The chamber began to tremble, the walls cracking and crumbling. The crystal skull emitted a blinding light, followed by a deafening roar. "What have you done?" Sterling screamed, his face contorted with rage. "I've saved us all," Elias replied, his voice filled with a newfound conviction. The temple began to collapse around them. Elias and Isabel fought their way out, dodging falling debris and escaping just as the entire structure imploded, burying Sterling and his men beneath tons of stone. They emerged from the wreckage, battered and bruised, but alive. The secret of the temple was safe. As they stood there, watching the jungle reclaim its lost treasure, Elias knew that his life had changed forever. He was no longer just a lawyer. He was something more, something better. He looked at Isabel, her face streaked with dirt and blood, but her eyes shining with a quiet triumph. He saw her not as his rival, but as his equal, his partner. "What now?" she asked. Elias smiled. "Now we go home, and we make sure that what happened here never happens again." They turned and walked away, leaving the secrets of the jungle behind them. They were an unlikely alliance, forged in the crucible of adversity, and they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The rain had stopped. The sun began to break through the clouds, casting a golden glow over the jungle. It was a new dawn, a new beginning, and Elias Thorne, the reluctant hero, was finally ready to embrace his destiny. Back in New York, Elias exposed the mining company's wrongdoings, providing irrefutable evidence he'd painstakingly gathered, even during his jungle ordeal, and corroborating it with Isabel's insider knowledge. The company was dismantled, its assets seized, and the land returned to the indigenous tribe. Elias, now a celebrated figure, dedicated his life to protecting vulnerable communities and fighting for environmental justice. Isabel, though still harboring a healthy dose of skepticism, found herself drawn to Elias's newfound purpose. They remained partners, both in law and, subtly, in life, their bond forever strengthened by their shared adventure in the heart of the Amazon. The memory of the Forbidden Temple and the power it held served as a constant reminder of the responsibility that came with